So here we are with Final Fantasy XIV. Now this series I'm going to call Dungeon Don'ts. We'll cover a few things in this video, and throughout the other videos we'll gradually move on to those. Now I'm not going to just sit here and list all the things you shouldn't do. I will tell stories, because I have run across a few of them, and we're going to tell a story about each one. Now in this particular video, we're going to talk about what not to do in a dungeon, part 1. Now, one of the things that I can't stand the most is when people in your dungeon group impede your play throughout the dungeon. Now let's look at what a dungeon is. A dungeon is an instanced area where you can join in a group to complete it. Has harder mobs, a boss scattered here and there, and usually one at the end. Now the point of these dungeons is usually to get some loot, get some experience, better gear for yourself, so on and so forth. So usually people will try and get through it with as much ease as possible, taking as little time as possible, because they want their experience, their loot, and all of that good stuff. So just the other day, my wife and I were in a party in Stone Vigil, and I was the healer, she was the DPS. We had another DPS and a tank. As in Final Fantasy XIV, you have 4 people in your party instead of 5. So we were going through this dungeon, and the tank was RP walking through the dungeon. Very slow, and when I got aggro, when I was moving next to him, because, I like to be near people as a healer, that way, if they take damage, I can heal them so they don't die. So I got aggro on this group of mobs as he was casually walking very, very slowly through them, and now I did not know this, but apparently if you walk very slowly through them, they do not aggro you. But truth be told, it takes a lot less time to just pull the pack of mobs and kill them than it does to RP walk your way through the entire dungeon. So he immediately gets upset that the pack of mobs got pulled, and I said, look, I got aggro because I had my heal over time on you, and you were walking through them, I was walking next to you, so I got your aggro because I'm the healer. And we asked him if he would just pull the pack of mobs so we could continue the dungeon. He then gets more upset and tells us that we should play our subs the way we want to and basically do our jobs, when he's the tank and he's not doing his job. So we voted to dismiss him because we just wanted to get the dungeon done. And it turns out that the other DPS in the party was queuing with him, so we ended up losing the DPS and the tank, but a moment or two later we got a new DPS and a tank. So I'm going to implore everybody not to do that. It is true that you have the right to play your subscription the way that you want to. However, you do not have the right to impede everybody else's gameplay while you're in an area designed for leveling, experience, loot, so on and so forth. And Stone Vigil by itself is one of the longer dungeons as it's a higher level. And I don't really, I don't think most people would feel like taking much, much longer to complete the instance because someone wants to walk their way through it. I would bring up the argument that, don't argue with your tank and your healer, but in this particular case, you do argue it because they're going to keep you in there longer than you need to be, which stops you from being able to do other things. And sure, might say that, well, you could just drop out of the dungeon. No, you can't, because then you get a debuff and you have to wait another 30 minutes to be able to queue again, regardless of what role you are. So that right there makes it take even longer if you just want to drop out of the dungeon and get a new group. You can't do that. I don't agree with that system, but that is the system that they have in place. So if you are a tank, a healer, or a DPS, doesn't really matter. don't impede other people's gameplay because you want to do something outside and set aside from the rest of the group. That's not how teamwork works. You work with your team to complete the dungeon, the scenario, whatever it is that you're doing. Not just go, oh, I'm paying for this game, I'll play the way I want, screw the rest of you. No. You're going to get kicked out of groups, just as they did, and you're generally not going to have a very good time. So don't do that. There's a dungeon don't for you. Don't impede everybody else's gameplay when they just want to get through the content as much as anybody else does. Now, since I mentioned it, let's talk about arguing with your tanks and your healers. Now, I've played many MMOs, and I've played many games overall, and I've noticed it's more of a thing with MMOs that you have the, vast outnumbering of DPS to tanks and healers. There are far more people willing to play damage classes than are willing to play tanks or healers. There are a few reasons for this. Usually, when you're questing out in the world, tanks and healers, it's really slow. Tanks don't do much damage, healers don't do much damage, they don't have very many damaging abilities, healers in particular. Tanks do, but they don't do as much damage as a damage-oriented class will. Now, Paladin, as you see in this particular video now, that's what I'm playing here, they have two stances. They have a tank stance and they have a damage stance. However, even in the damage stance, they don't do a lot. They do maybe a third of what a damage class will do. And that's the reason why you have more people playing damage classes than you do tank classes or healer classes, or in this particular game they're called jobs. But classes, jobs, whichever, doesn't really matter, same thing. So you always have this offset, when you're playing a damage class. Yes, you get through the questing in the game, you can kill things easily, you get things done more quickly, at the cost of having armor, the ability to heal, and when you want to queue for a dungeon, if you're queuing by yourself when no one else in your party, you're looking at a 15 to 20 minute wait, because you're waiting for a tank or a healer to enter the queue. Now, when I say don't argue with your tanks and your healers, the reason behind this is they're the ones volunteering their time to come in and tank heal a dungeon for you. True, you are also volunteering your time, but because of the amount of DPS classes that outnumber tanks or healers, you're going to be waiting a longer time in queue than they are. So there is a particular way that they want to do it. If they want to gather up a few packs of mobs, and then stop at a certain point, just do that. If you died because you didn't get enough heals, don't sit there and argue with the healer who's trying to keep an eye on 2 or 3 other party members, including themselves. You may have been too far away, you may have been standing in something that you shouldn't have, and pissing off your tank or your healer is going to ensure that the run is going to go cruddy, because they can, it's shitty, but they can do things to you. They can not tank the mobs, they can not heal you. I mean, healers get a choice. They can heal single target and just choose not to heal you. If you pull something, the tank can choose not to pull it off of you and let you die. So, yes, it's a garbage thing to do. It's in everybody's best interest that you just do the dungeon the way that you're supposed to do it, and it's not really a problem. But if you piss off your tanks and healers, the fact of the matter is that there are more DPS than there are tanks and healers. And nobody should really be pissing anybody off. But that's the facts. There are more of you than there are of them. And if you want to get kicked out of the party and have to wait another 20-30 minutes for a queue and hope you don't get the same tank or the same healer, then by all means piss them off. Here's the other thing. People who have been playing their classes into the 50s and 60s and 70s, they know what they're doing. They don't need someone sitting there basically backseat driving and telling them how to play their class. I'm sure if someone needed help, they could ask, or they could say, hey, I'm new to this. So I guess we're covering 3 things in this video. Don't impede others' gameplay, don't piss off your party members, and here's the 3rd one, don't tell other people how to do their job. I cannot stand it when that happens. We had it happen just earlier today when we were doing our main story quest, or main story scenario. My wife was tanking, and the other tank was trying to tell her how she should be tanking, what skills she should be using, when she tanks just fine. I've never had a problem running dungeons with her. I've never had a problem with any of that. Come to find out, this other tank had no other jobs leveled. Their gear wasn't that great, and they weren't even very over-leveled. We were doing Praetorium, and they were level 52, which is literally only 2 levels above what's required to enter Praetorium. So, having very little experience, they were trying to tell someone who does have experience and has been playing the class through and through how they should be doing their job. Don't do that. I don't tell DPS how to do their job when I'm tanking. I don't tell the tank how to, do his job when I'm healing. And for the most part, people don't tell me how to do my job when I'm tanking or healing. So it would be good if people would refrain from doing that. Everybody would have a better time, and you would get through the content without a problem. If there's a particular way that someone likes to play their class and it works for them and it doesn't cause an issue with the rest of the party, fuck it, let them do it. I don't see the problem. Now, yes, there could be better ways of doing it, or maybe you've uncovered a secret that, has really helped you and say you want to share. Okay, well, there are ways to do that without saying, you should be doing this. You should not be doing this. You can offer it up in a more positive manner. So those are the 3 things for today. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever you feel like doing, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care.